While some are yelling hard over the US aid cut, many are happy that Africa is finally breaking away from the so-called US dependency trap, which has over the years held Africa from self-reasoning and moving forward. Here, we're diving into a headline that's been making waves across the globe. Access to US aid a thing of the past. A bold statement made by one of the most influential persons in the continent, Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, the Director General of the World Trade Organization. But the question is, what does this mean for developing nations? Why is this happening now? And how are people reacting to it? Well, just stick around because we're unpacking it all, right here, right now. Let's get into it. So, let's start with the basics. Earlier this week, Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, a global economic heavyweight and former Nigerian finance minister, commented on a major shift in international development funding. According to her, the United States Agency for International Development might be scaling back its aid programs, possibly to the point where access to this funding could become a relic of history for many countries. Now, this isn't just a random soundbite. Okonjo-Iweala's words carry weight. She's been at the forefront of economic policy for decades, and her current role at the WTO gives her a front-row seat to global trade and financial trends. The director of the World Trade Organization made this comment while speaking to the local television network, Channel Television, and she made these remarks in the context of shifting global priorities and urging all African nations to better wake up and stop depending on any aids that will limit them from making progress in life, which the US aid has been doing for so long. However, the big question here is, what's driving this potential change? Is Donald Trump in support of Africans or against them? Well, let's break it down more. First, let's talk about the US aid. For decades, it's been a cornerstone of American foreign policy, pumping billions of dollars into programs for health, education, infrastructure, and disaster relief in countries across Africa, Asia, and beyond, as they claim. Think HIV, AIDS initiatives, food security projects, or emergency aid after natural disasters. For many nations, especially in the developing world, US aid hasn't just been a lifeline, it's been a game changer. But here's the thing, the world isn't the same as it was 20 or 30 years ago. The US is facing its own economic pressures. Think rising national debt, inflation worries, and debates over domestic spending. Some policymakers in Washington have been vocal about redirecting funds inward, arguing that American taxpayers shouldn't foot the bill for global challenges when there's so much to fix at home. Add to that a growing geopolitical rivalry with powers like China, who've been stepping up their own investments in places like Africa, and you've got a recipe for a rethink on aid. Okonjo-Iweala's comments seem to hint at this broader shift. She's not just pointing out a funding cut. She's suggesting a fundamental change in how the global aid system works. Could this mean the US is stepping back, leaving a vacuum for others to fill? Or is it a sign that countries need to stand on their own 2 feet? Well, let's look at the implications for developing nations. If access to US aid really does become a thing of the past, the ripple effects could be massive, especially for countries that have relied on it heavily. Take sub-Saharan Africa, for example. Nations like Nigeria, Kenya, and Ghana have benefited from US aid programs for everything from agriculture to maternal health care. Without that support, governments might need to scramble to fill the gap, and that's easier said than done. Okonjo-Iweala, being Nigerian herself, knows this firsthand. During her time as finance minister, she pushed for economic reforms to reduce Nigeria's dependence on foreign aid and boost local revenue. Think oil wealth management and tax reforms. Her statement simply means that this is a wake-up call to all African nations. However, not every country is ready to pivot like that. Smaller economies or those recovering from conflict might find themselves in a tougher spot. But then, challenges make one stronger, so this is the time to take up the challenge. However, this effect won't only be felt by the governments alone. Communities are likely to get a bite of the heat too. Imagine a village that depends on US aid-funded clean water projects or school supplies. If that dries up, what happens? Some experts argue it could push more people into poverty or destabilize fragile regions. On the flip side, others say it might force innovation, local solutions stepping up where foreign aid once dominated. Well, let's look at how the world is reacting over this aid cut. Some folks see this as a positive shift. One sentiment popping up is that Africa, in particular, might finally break free from what's sometimes called the aid dependency trap. The idea is that relying on handouts can stifle self-reliance, and maybe this is the push nations need to build stronger economies. But others? They're worried. There's chatter online about how this could widen inequality between rich and poor countries, or even spark tensions as nations compete for whatever aid is left. And let's not forget the political angle. Some are speculating that China or even the European Union might swoop in to fill the void, reshaping global alliances in the process. Okonjo-Iweala's statement also put her in the spotlight. She's not just commenting as an observer. Her role at the WTO means she's got influence over trade policies that could help offset aid losses. Will she push for fairer trade deals to support developing nations? That's something to out for. Now let's zoom out a bit. This isn't just about the US aid or even the US. It's about a world in transition. Climate change, pandemics, wars. These are global problems that don't respect borders. Historically, aid has been one way richer nations pitch in to tackle them. But if that model's fading, what replaces it? Okonjo-Iweala's comments might be a hint that we're heading toward a future where trade, investment, and local resilience matter more than charity. Think about it. Countries like India and Vietnam have already shown you can grow fast by leaning on exports and private investment rather than aid. Could Africa or Latin America follow suit? Or are we risking a gap where only the strong survive? What do you think? Is this the end of an era for US aid, or just a bump in the road? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to hear from you. And if you enjoyed this deep dive, hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell so you don't miss our next update. Until then, stay out of trouble.